Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. Just beginning this session to say I'm acknowledging I'm on the grounds of the traditional lands of the Kulin Nation. Pay my respects to their elders, past and present. We are very lucky in RAV. We get to connect with lots of different traditional custodians across the state of Victoria as we share stories and culture and art, and we have we're really grateful that we are able to travel across the state and do this kind of touring and continue and draw from the strength of that culture that still is thriving and strong today. Just a little bit of housekeeping to start with. We are on Zoom. If you would like captions, you can click on the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen, and captions will be added live as we progress through the session. We ask that you do keep your mics off for the bulk of the session, and cameras, totally happy if you want to switch your cameras off. That's whatever makes you comfortable, fine too. We recommend you go into speaker view because we'll be sharing screen a lot during this as we talk through the program and talk through the application process. So that button is up in the top right-hand corner. And questions that you have, you can just pop in the chat, and Adam and I will both kind of monitor those as we go through. So I'm Bindi Green. I've been working at RAV for about 4 years now in the touring program, and I am newly this year in the role of the Connecting Places program. Also with us today is Adam Fawcett, who's our marketing and communications guru and legend. And so he's here to help talk through some of the marketing material content of the application. So just a little bit about Connecting Places. This is our halls touring program. So we work with a network of community presenters, is kind of the rough name we give them across the state, who are often volunteers, often arts committees in small towns that like to put on events for their communities in their local hall. The halls are really varied. There's a variety of skills and resource across these different halls. So the program that we offer, the touring program we offer, is looking for professional artists who are quite flexible and adaptable and can fit into different spaces quite easily, and who often will be the ones with the highest kind of level of performing arts professional skills in the room. Connecting Places is a program that supports presenters to hold these kind of events. We run workshops, we do a lot of training, we do a lot of networking, we assist with funding, and one of the things we do is offer a touring program to suit this style of performance and this style of event. And that's what we're talking about today. So we're opening up applications now for artists who would like to be part of that touring program. I'm going to share my screen now and just have a little look at the touring program that we've got on offer this year, which will help to give you a little bit of a sense of what this program offers. So for 2022, this is our website, Regional Arts Victoria. You can find information about this program here, Connecting Places. The touring program, this skills development is mainly for the presenters, but yeah, there's lots. Tour School is a good little place to go as well for artists if you are looking for a bit of, that's where we have a lot of our resources and webinars from last year available for you as well. But for the touring program for this year, so we've got 6 different shows on offer. Just scrolling down a little bit through here. The shows we have, we've got Waves, which is a theatre show, which is a storytelling show with a solo performer. Trinket the Robot, puppetry for children, during April and May. Jazz High Tea, which is a great a jazz company. They bring a lot of the dressing to put on a high tea in the town, and jazz music, and the local community contributes by bringing the food. Vulcan Elvis, a music show. Michelangelo, who's a well-travelled performer touring around Victoria. Music, a lot of storytelling. That's a kind of theatrical music event. And Sound of Your Town, which is a music show with Mamakin Spender that connects in with local choirs in that community. And they do some they come arrive the day before, rehearse with the choir, and then the choir joins them on stage for the event. So that will be touring in August and October. And Junklandia, which is a kids show, another children's show offered during term time. And that's one that's touring in our arts and education program that we also offer to the Community Presenter Network. So you can kind of see we run generally through the middle of the year, March through to November. Tours are generally, the timing of the tours is based on when the artists are available and also when the demand is from the presenters. The summer months tend not to be very popular because it's a really busy time. It can be bushfire season as well, and we're doing a lot of regional touring around into different parts of the state. Things like harvest time start to impact when tours will happen as well. And the deep, dark winter times are usually not great for getting audiences out to come down to the local hall. So that kind of June, July tends not to be as popular as well with this particular network of presenters. So there's a range of shows there. They have a whole lot of different sorts of experiences, different artistic practices, but there's a bit of a common theme in that they're all kind of lightweight. They're all kind of reasonably lo-fi and very flexible and adaptable to different spaces. You can have a bit more read through about those if you like. What I'll switch to now is the application page, and I think Adam's going to pop a link into the chat. So this is where we've got a bit more information about the shows that we are looking for. The timeline here. So applications are open now. They're going to close on the 3rd of May. We then work with a panel who come together of community presenters as well as artists who have toured through this program before, and they will kind of make the decision together with myself and other members of the RAV team to select the program for next year. So applicants will be notified towards the end of May, and then we announced the program live and in mid-July. Now, the timelines are also, it does feel quite early, but it's good to get these things locked down, because then we go away and sell the shows and work with the community presenters so that they can then source funding to put the shows on. And that funding announcement, that funding for the presenters is often not confirmed until close to almost Christmas time. It's late November, early December, and that's the Creative Victoria timeline for their Small Regional Presenters Fund, which is mainly how most of these presenters will pay for these shows. So we work with them quite closely to put their applications together. Once they've decided on the shows they want for their communities, they can then apply to Creative Victoria to get funding to cover the costs of the artist fees and some cost towards putting these events on. So for the companies that are touring, your funding comes from what we call a sell-off fee. So you get paid a fee per show, and the presenter is the one who that takes the box office from the tickets on the night. So the funding is kind of guaranteed for the companies, which is supported by Creative Victoria. Which is a really good program. And so the risk is kind of taken away from these presenters as well. So coming down here, so we've got here, oh, sorry, I should just quick back a little bit. One thing I will mention is we have an arts and education program. We work quite closely with them, and they have their separate expression of interest process. There's a link here that you can click on to be notified when that one opens, and it'll be in about 4 weeks' time. We kind of we work with them to take any shows that are kind of aimed specifically for children, primary and secondary age. We like to offer to both networks, both the schools network as well as the community presenter network. So those applications will be done through the arts and education EOI process rather than through this Connecting Places program. And there'll be an option in that application process that you can tick a box to say, yes, I want to be considered for this as well. The applications are done online. We've got a link here right down the bottom where you can click to go to the online form, and it'll take you through page by page by page where you enter information. And yes, no. So that's kind of what the form looks like. I won't go through that too much, but I will draw your attention up here to say you can save your progress. Each time you come in, each time you return to it though, you can enter email and a password, but you'll have to do that each time. So each time you return to come back, you'll have to save it again and go through that process each time you come in and out of the form. What we do recommend instead is that you use we've got a drafting tool on the website here that you can use to prepare all your responses, and we'll go through. So that's the document I'll have a look through with you in a moment. Submission guidelines here, that's a really useful one to read. It's a bit of an overview, and I'll leave that for you to look up in your own time. But what would be good to talk through here is the selection criteria. So this is a good guide to the shows that we're looking for this program. Innovative, high quality and entertaining. Innovative is kind of it doesn't have to be, changing all the rules of theatre. It doesn't have to be brand spanking new, but we're looking for shows that are fairly contemporary, kind of new, rather than shows that have been around for a long time, and high quality and entertaining is more, it's good. It's a good kind of sense of what it's a good way to kind of describe what the night will be. If we think about the shows that we're choosing, we think about the night that the presenters are putting on. They're bringing their town together for a good fun night out in their local hall. So it's can often be like they might do this once or twice or 3 times in a year. So it's a big event, it's a big social event. There's often a supper, which is really lovely. They might run a bar to make some money and raise some funds for the local footy and netball club. It's a real special event kind of style of performance. Preferred art forms: theatre, music, cabaret, comedy, live performance. I'm kind of dancing around. We're saying we're looking for things, sorts of shows that will leave people. It doesn't have to always be completely upbeat. We've had some theatre shows which have touched on some quite serious content, and presenters have used that as a springboard to talk about social issues in their town. We've also had some really crazy burlesque shows. We've had a whole variety of all sorts of things that can be good. So we're not saying it has to be funny, or it has to be upbeat, or it has to be one thing or another. It can be anything, but it's good to think about what that experience will be, why, for the town and the people coming to see the show, and why that might be something that what place that your show is going to, what is your show offering for that community for that night. The project is community engagement component. It'd be good to just touch on that. A lot of oftentimes we'll have a workshop offered along with the show. So the company might arrive the day before, do some singing, songwriting workshops, do some theatre making workshops, we've had one company went and did talks in the library with the local genealogy, people who had joined the genealogy club, because the show was all about family history and telling the story of her ancestor. And so that talking to people who were also interested in their own family histories was a really great little side thing that she could offer as well. The project is tour ready, so we're looking for shows that are established. The presenters, we're not looking for works that haven't been made yet. When the presenters who are going to be booking this show, they're not as experienced as the performing arts centres. They don't have the breadth of knowledge of necessarily of what your company's done in the past. They need to be able to sell the show to their audiences in their towns, and so it needs to have a good solid, the show needs to know what it is really, and because you also will be asked to adapt and be flexible to be able to fit into a whole lot of different performance venues. Relatively easy to remount. There are no remount fees for connecting places like there are with our touring services program, and that's mainly a funding thing. It's the show fees that the community presenters can offer are not as big as the show fees that performing arts centres can offer. So we don't have the capacity to kind of spread a remount fee across all of the different presenters on the tour. And so we're looking for shows that you might need a day or two to rehearse it again before you head out on the road, and you can build that into your performance fee, but it's not something that we can afford to pay, $14,000 for a remount 2-week season so you can redevelop it and get it back on the road. So it needs to be able to head out quite easily. It's also some of this touring is also weekend-based touring, because often these events are Friday, Saturday nights, these kind of shows, this kind of programming. And so it's helpful if the show is able to just sort of pop out and do different dates. You don't need to kind of hold everyone together for a full 2 weeks to make it viable. Project is relevant to regional communities. There's 1,000 reasons why shows are relevant. Affordable, maximum per show fee of $3,500 and maximum touring party of 4 people. The touring party is mainly because RAV will have access to, we apply for funding, I should say, to Creative Victoria to cover all the travel costs for the show. And for this kind of touring, it's hard. We don't have as big a pool of money for the travel costs as we are able to access for the touring services program. And so RAV covers all the costs of accommodation, travel, per diems, so that can get expensive. Once you get above 4 people, you start to need additional vehicles on the road as well, and so extra vehicles also can get to be expensive. So that starts to move your show out of connecting places and into the touring services landscape a bit more. We might have a little look. I'll get to the end here and we've got a little budget template down here we'll have a look at in a minute, just when you're thinking about putting a show fee together. The company has quality marketing materials in their application. So this is coming back to the idea that this is an established show. You've had a bit of a season, you've got a bit of documentation. So we will ask for that. at the top of the application process, and then so it's all ready to go and to help with selling the show to the presenters, and so they can then, we can build up a good tour. We kind of need that stuff really early. And Adam will talk through that a little bit later. Tech requirements are adaptable. At halls touring, some halls will have lighting rigs and a PA. Some will just have the bare stage and fold out seats on the floor. One thing we do offer, so the your show needs to be able to cope with a variety of spaces, to be able to cope with some flexibility in how it's going to be staged in the different sorts of venues. I'll just come back to the technical package. Oops. Say hello, Artanet. With the technical equipment available, so we offer to the presenters a technical package with the show. So the touring artists can come with their own lighting and sound gear, and that they then will be responsible for setting that up in the hall for the show if that's what the presenter needs. So we might have a show that has 8 venues on their tour over 2 weeks or 3 weeks. 5 of the venues might opt in to take the technical package because they don't have a tech person or tech gear, and 3 of them will say, no, we're fine, we've got that covered. So the money that the presenters pay, those 5 presenters will pay $500 contribution for a technical package. 5 times 500 is 2,500. That then gets passed on to the artist to cover the cost of hiring tech gear and potentially a person as well to be responsible for setting that up and packing it down. So when we talk about a tech package, that's something that Connecting Places artists need to be prepared to provide. And we can help you kind of put that together and work through what that is.
Can I just jump in and ask a couple of questions, Bindi? We've got some questions. Callie's got 2 questions. I'll just ask the first one. She says that she's a regional New South Wales-based artist. Is the fact that she's interstate an issue?
Yeah. We can accept applications from anywhere around Australia. You can be an artist. We've had one artist touring this year who was based in the UK. We don't pay the travel cost to get to Victoria. You need to be responsible for any costs associating with relocating here. The only travel costs we can cover are for the regional stays or for regional artists for staying in metro areas. So you can definitely apply. You can definitely, and we do take works from interstate artists, but we can't cover entirely all your costs because we just don't have enough. We just don't have enough travel funding, unfortunately. Our travel funding is for the touring element. We are supported to cover travel costs for artists to get out to Victoria, but there's an understanding that there's a home base somewhere that you if you've got family in Victoria, like that, artists have done that before, they come and stay with their family in Melbourne, and then we cover their travel out to the regional areas.
Great, thank you. And she's got another great question actually about the requirement to be tour ready, and what does that mean over the last couple of years when people haven't been able to get out and tour? Yeah. Good.
It's a very good question. I think it's really about it's being tour ready, is that it's more what I was talking about before about the show is fully developed, and the show is, you're quite clear on what the show is, and so that we can then convey that to the presenters. So we're looking to discourage anyone who's so we sometimes have companies apply and they might have done 3 shows over the last 4 years, and they're making their new show and they think, oh yep, I'll put it in for this program, I'll apply because I know I'll have a new show by this time next year. but that's not useful for us, because when we go out to our community presenter network after July, between July and November, we need to be able to sell the show. And they need to understand what the show is. So the performing arts centres are more able to kind of get a sense of what your show is if it hasn't been made yet, because you can talk about, they've got a bit more of an understanding. But for the volunteer committees, it really needs to be kind of, it needs to be a fairly established work, or you need to be prepared to, and you also as artists, like, you need to understand how to adapt it. How, like, when we ask you questions about, well, can you do it in this undercover area? Like, we'll talk about different performance opportunities that pop up. And so you need to have a clearer understanding of how your show is going to adapt to that, and how to put together a technical list and a technical package that will see your show through through a variety of venues. So you also need to kind of really understand the nuts and bolts of what your show is, to be able to cope with the variety of compromises you might need to make at different venues along the tour.
Right, thank you. And just one final question from Melissa, who's just asked about the size of the travelling party. She's just asked, is it strictly 4 people, or can we apply for the funding and cover any additional costs for the 5th person themselves, for instance?
Yeah, look, that's a great idea. And we're definitely open to those sorts of, like, that's what our limitation is. But if you've got a way of dealing with that, if you've got a little bit of extra funding then to cover that, then let's talk about it, and let's definitely put an application in, and talk about how, if you're sitting outside of the criteria and you've got a plan to how to cope with that, then we'd love to hear it. We're definitely more open to looking at different ways of doing things. Yeah.
That's it. You can keep going.
Keep going.
Thanks, Bindi.
That's good. I'll move that over there. So funding. Yeah, so funding, I think we've talked a little bit about. So just so your show fees are funded by the presenters, travel costs are funded by us, box office goes to the presenter. That's how that kind of works. What time is it? 12:30. Getting through. I just had to have a little look at these 2 other documents that we've got here. All right. Okay, just coming back to selection criteria. Tech specs. The project is able to bump in and perform same day. That's ideal. Again, and I think it's a good. I'm glad you asked that question, because we've got one show touring this year that does is splitting over 2 days, because they've built in a big community workshop engagement process. So these are the ideals. But again, if your project sits outside of what we've said here, then just tell us why, and there'll be sometimes good reasons why that's okay. The company understands the context of working with volunteer community groups. Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about the sort of communities you're going to, April to November, equity and diversity. We love those words. We love what they mean. We love what they bring. Yeah. So down here, we've got some guidelines, budget template. Let's have a little look at that. That's here. So budget template for the sell-off model. So this has come from Auspicious Arts, who are an incredible organisation who support artists and producers in the independent world. This is what they have put together, and they provide. I think Adam's put a link in there. Definitely worth going and having a look on their website at their resources page. This is to help you figure out, what do I charge for my show? sell-off, we'd use the word sell-off fee, and so that's when the presenter buys the show directly and the presenter takes the box office. So that's the model that we've been talking about through this. So here is it's a tool to work for you to start figuring out what your show is going to cost you and what to charge. So artist wages, you might say, according to the LPA, everyone's going to get 12. Oh, that's kind of a weekly fee. All right, so everyone's going to get $500. We've got 3 people on the road. So that's $1,500 just in what I'm paying my artist. Oh, I'm going to have a crew person. I'm going to pay one of those. And then you can go through and have a look at, okay, it's going to cost me $50 because I've got all these vegetables I use in the show each time I do it that get eaten. Producer fee, it's worth factoring in things like that because we'll be working with the producer in the lead up. So you might say, oh, what am I going to do? $250 for the producer for each season we work through, and go, all right, so that's getting close to working out, that's what my show is going to cost. And you can go through, that's a very rough way of just sort of figuring out a few basics. Royalties are down here. If you have any royalties that you're committed to paying to your creative team, you can add those in and include that in your show. We've had a couple of companies too recently take on the One Music, the old APRA royalties, and do that on behalf of all the presenters. And so they just charge, like they might charge like 5% or something to cover those costs. So that's an option for you as well. Auspicious Arts have got lots of great information on this part of the process. Highly recommend having a look through. We don't tend to get involved too much in what you charge for your show. We kind of need to leave that up to you a little bit. But we will definitely help to make sure that you're charging what you're worth. We really believe in artists being paid what they should be paid, and that you get paid for the time that you spend on a project. So lines like admin, producer fee, they're in there for a really good reason, so that because in the lead up to you doing the tour, we'll be relying on a lot of communication with you to get marketing toolkits together for interviews, for all sorts of bits and pieces. So put a little bit of fee in there to cover your time for all of that. The drafting tool is a really great thing that I want to show you as well. So this is here is a Word document, so that you can prepare all your responses. Lots of links. So these questions in here are all in order that you'll see them in the application. So it's pretty much, they sit hand in glove, these two, this document and the application online. So the first question we always ask is this for primary or secondary age children audience? If yes, then we redirect you to the Arts and Ed application process. If not, or you're not sure, if you think it's more family rather than children, like there's families audience, they often get used interchangeably, but there's a good difference between them. Children is really just for kids, just for that age group. Family is often can be, G-rated, but you're wanting to appeal, you're wanting to get an audience that's a mix of adults and kids together. For that, we really recommend the Connecting Places application program. Company information. So this is what we'll use when we do contracting. This is all the official. Who's the person we're talking to about this project? And a bit of business information here. So the drafting tool is useful because it's usually got a bit more of this italics in here, a little bit more description, a little bit more information, a bit more to kind of help you navigate. What are you asking for here? Like one here question, do you intend to work with Auspicious Arts projects? Some companies work with them fairly regularly and do all their work for them and do all the contracting through Auspicious Arts. Completely up to you. whether or not you work through them or work directly, and there's lots of different ways. But it's just handy for us to know at this stage. If you're not working with Auspicious Arts, then we just will need you or your organisation to make sure that you have all your proper insurances in place so that you can be a responsible person out on the road, and your people are all looked after. Project information here. So this section is really asking for practical information. So there's kind of two ways of talking about your show in this document. One is the marketing section, and this one is a much more practical description. So the project information is talking about what is it, what happens, this is what the panel will read to get an understanding of what is the show that you're offering. So this is where you can kind of give away the spoilers in the show, talk about what are the really exciting moments, talk about things that you wouldn't necessarily reveal in a press release, but they're the bits that the presenters really need to know, because that's the exciting moments, the big reveals, the highlights. They're the things that are going to get them to make a decision, go, oh yeah, I want that for my program. So this is much more practical. It's to give the presenters an understanding of what is it that we're getting here. Community engagement activities. Getting a sense of who's in your team. It's useful to know who, sometimes people recognize names of the creative team. And will really support a show based on that, because they trust that director, or they trust that designer, or they trust that writer. It can be a really helpful thing. It could be in diversity. So some of these are optional. We're really working hard to track how well we're doing in this space. So it's useful for us if you feel comfortable filling out these responses. But again, it's optional, completely up to you. Are you doing the show? We'd love to hear when shows are happening. Mid-June, that should be end of the year, actually. My apologies. It's a really good opportunity if you end up being in the program and you've got an outcome, you've got a showing, you've got a season somewhere. We always love to let the presenters know so that they can come and see it, and that there's nothing more helpful in knowing how to sell a show to your audience than having seen it and being able to talk about it. It's a really good way to get people to get a bit of audience, help them to connect with their audiences. Touring party information, how many people, who's in the team, do you have a tech, what sort of vehicle do you need? So this is us thinking about what are the travel costs going to be, how many cars are on the road, how many people. Royalties, a bit of information here, and marketing information. And I might hand over to Adam.
Cool. Thanks, Bindi. Hi, everyone. So in terms of marketing for the EOI, we do ask that you provide some basic stuff like a marketing tagline, some short and long marketing copy, identifying some key themes and audiences around your work, and any audience or review quotes that you might have that we can use. Part of the reason why we need all this stuff up front so early in the process is because we'll use part of that material to first pitch your show, like Bindi said, to our community places, our Connecting Places presenter network. And then obviously those presenters will use that material once they've booked a show to engage their own audiences. So that's why we put so much emphasis on gathering good quality marketing materials from you guys up front. Now, most of the marketing materials in the EOI are fairly standard, so I don't want to touch too much on that today, but I will say that if you're maybe wondering what to prioritise in terms of the marketing collateral, I think for us, we prioritise the marketing copy, the images, and especially a good promo video. So none of that should really come as a surprise to anyone. But if you can get those three things right, you really are giving yourself the best opportunity to be selected for the program. I'll touch on what Christine said before, because that's a real, obviously, it's going to be a real issue for a lot of artists, unfortunately. So in terms of supplying that marketing collateral to us, we do ask that you submit that as a Dropbox link so that we can easily assess your material. There's really two ways that you can do that depending on how you like to work. But essentially you can either have one folder in Dropbox and just dump all your marketing collateral into that and just share that link with us. Or like Bindi's showing on the screen, you might like to create individual folders for each type of marketing collateral, which is what we do at RAV, which just makes it a lot easier to navigate to stuff quickly, especially for presenters as well. Whatever method you decide to use, we do ask that you don't just dump the material with random file names in there. Everything should be really clearly labelled. And I'll give extra credit to anyone that puts their photographer's credit in the file names. I love when people do that. So aside from making sure your marketing copy, your images and your promo video are as good as they can be, I think the biggest tip that I can give you is, and Bindi mentioned earlier, is just to have a look at the website and see what we're touring this year. That'll not only give you a really good idea of what kind of work is in the program, but you can actually see how we use your marketing log lines and your copy and your images to promote the show to the network. So yeah, have a good look at those 5 or 6 shows, because that'll give you a really great understanding before you begin your application. I'm also always really happy to give you any individual advice if you feel that you need that. You can find my email in the guidelines document, so don't hesitate to get in touch if you need advice or help with anything marketing wise. And just with Christine's question, I think just be honest in the application. Tell us what you do have, what you can supply, and what you can't, and why. I mean, obviously you can still do really great marketing copy. I'm assuming that you're like talking about things like getting images and video and things. So do the best you can with what you can do, and explain why you haven't been able to provide what you haven't been able to provide, and maybe if you were selected a timeline, for instance, to do those things, like to do a photo shoot or to film a promo videos, and we'll obviously take that into consideration. So I hope that's useful. Yeah, I think that's it for me. We're running out of time, so I'll keep that pretty brief. I'll hand it back to you, Bindi, but if there's any other questions, yeah, just get in touch. I'm really happy to help.
And yeah, question there from Ruben, can we use Google Drive instead of Dropbox? Yeah, if you've got this already set up somewhere, totally happy. And we've got this in here. I've got somewhere, if like where all the responses are, you can just let us know what the link is to where all this stuff is already stored, and that's totally fine. There's no point, repeating a whole bunch of work. We don't want you spending time setting up a whole Dropbox folder list if you've already got something exactly the same in Google Drive or another platform shared. Just let us know. That's no problem at all.
Yeah.
Just a question there from Rosemary. If accepted into the program, reaccessing other funds, what are the maximum number of venues one might play? What is the minimum number of venues? So we would work with you on what's achievable for your show, and how many venues is really about how long does it take to bump in? How much time off between shows are you going to need? How much, sometimes, we don't tend to do more than 5 venues in a week. And that would be for a show that would have like a 4-hour bump in. So you would have travel, bump in, do the show and stay that night and next day. So five venues over 6 days is probably the max. And that's pretty rare. 4 is a solid week. Often with connecting places, it's 2 or 3 in a week, because the performance nights tend to aim towards the weekends rather than like Monday and Tuesday nights are rarely performance nights. It's and like Bendigo, for instance, are really great. They can sometimes book a show for a week. They'll do bump in on the Monday, do a show Tuesday, Wednesday at the Capitol Theatre, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you're out to different halls within 45 minutes of Bendigo, where they put shows on in small halls. So that could be like a little mini tour within the big tour. But but we start with a time from you of when let's look at this 2-week period, and then we go away and we work out what's your parameters for traveling and touring, and then we work to fill as many venues in that as we can. Submission for VCA drama, theatre studies. Yeah, if you're looking at submitting the VCA drama playlist, they're always looking for shows that have touring in regional areas. We often have in our touring services, we've usually got at least 1, if not 2 shows which are on the VCA playlist. I would recommend going through the Arts and Ed program for that, because if you apply through that program, you would have a lot more opportunity to get out to schools as well as performing arts centres and venues. We've started, our Arts and Ed team are now starting to book shows. We did a show, Hell's Canyon, the last year that we could tour, 2019, which went out to a mix of performing arts centres and schools. They had kind of 2 versions of the show, and that worked really well. So we kind of work, we've got our 3 streams, Arts and Ed, touring services and connecting places, but any presenter network can kind of book shows can book any show that, so performing arts centres can book shows from any of those streams. Schools are able to kind of book shows from any of those streams. We try and make roughly specific to the sorts of venue, but then we make them available to everyone. So there's always a weird little bit of crossover sometimes. Marketing, tech specs. All right, so there's a bunch of questions here that are kind of the basics that we kind of need to know that will end up being in the contract that we're committing to. If you've got a tech spec document, totally, you can upload that. You might need, but you might need to readjust it a little bit to think about halls touring. Thinking about what does your show need technically to fit in a small hall rather than a full kitted out venue. Do you need some help? What sort of help do you need from the staff? You might not get lighting and sound people who know how to program a lighting desk, but you get some very willing and enthusiastic helpers if you need them to help hang things from the walls or tape down cables or empty a van. It's thinking what does your show need? Minimum stage. So how big a floor space do you need for your show? Are there like puppetry shows sometimes need light blackouts? So what other things do you need the venue to provide to make your show successful? Flat floors are often a thing. If you've got lots of things on wheels on your stage, thinking about what are the kind of non-negotiable things that your show is going to need. Lighting and sound, projection, those sorts of things. So a lot of the halls we go to, there's notes here saying avoid 3-phase, consider booms, trees, cables, extra power leads. You're often plugging into maybe 2 or 3 power points within the building. So 3-phase power is often not an option. So thinking about tech in terms of power points and how many power points you might need to run all your gear.
Bindi, just want to ask a quick question from Ruben about tech specs. He's asked, is there an average dimension for venues? Would you say there's an average?
Average, it's hard to say. The good thing is that like often they might have a raised stage, but there's also the flat floor. So if your show won't fit on what the rates, there's various ways to present in these places.
Would you say a town hall is probably the average?
Community hall, probably small, like that. Yeah. And I kind of differentiate because town halls are often quite big. Community halls are like the Scout Hall or the that kind of hall. It's a little bit smaller, a little bit more intimate. you often might not have much more than it might be like about 8 meters wide, 5 meters deep. That's, yeah, but it's thinking about what your show kind of needs. And you can be like, it can be flexible for some shows, like with the ballet companies. If they're going to bring tarquette with them and roll out some tarquette, they really need to have, they kind of need to know, yeah, that can determine how deep the show needs to be, because the rolls of tarquette are exactly 1.2 meters wide. So they don't want to have tarquette rolling over the front. If you've got, so it's circus and physical theatre, that becomes an issue with as well. If you've got set pieces that need to be set out in a particular ratio to each other, then yeah, you're gonna need, what does your show need, and then will it fit into spaces, and how do we fit it into spaces?
Yeah, and Lorraine's pointed out, yeah, they're often 120 to 150 seaters with audience often seated on round tables. That happens a lot. Yeah. It's often really lovely that they'll put tables out and have bring their picnic baskets and have a chat, have a natter, and then watch a show. Audio projection tech. Like, we don't need a fully detailed list of every single element, but it's good to know, all right, 2 radio mics, we've got 2 trees on stands. Like, it's, you can talk at this stage of the application process, it's we don't need a detailed, fully kitted out list of everything, but a good sense of the basics of what your show is going to need. Transport notes. What sort of vehicle do you need? Will you fit in a 1-ton van? Can you fit in a wagon? Do you need it? Do you need something bigger? You could also say, I've got a car that's, you know, if you want to use your own car, there's also, that's an option as well. And we can, you know, this is the thing we'll talk about once we actually get into the point of talking, once we get into the nuts and bolts of getting a tour on the road. Support materials. If there's anything additional that you need, you can attach. Workshop information is really good for this. If you've got a little 1-pager that you use to advertise your workshops about what it costs, what you need, how many people it can suit, like that's really helpful for presenters to kind of see. Yeah, anything that hasn't been covered. And when you get to that point, like, that's also where you can upload your tech specs or other bits and pieces. There's me, there's my name, there's my email address. You can email me at any time. I've also show you. Can I just ask one more quick question?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Lorraine's just asked if community engagement or workshops are possible. Is this an extra cost to presenters on top of the show fee?
Depends. Oh, it's a good question, actually. You can either offer it as a package. It can be, so we have some artists that tour and say, we offer, this is what our presence in your town costs. For $3,400, you get a show, you get a workshop. Like, it's a package kind of deal, because they really, really want that connection. They really want to prioritize that. It can be an added extra. It can be something that's a lot of circus. Often circus shows often offer like juggling classes or acrobatics kind of classes, and for, you know, $400 for a 30 student class for 1 hour, and they bring all the gear with them. It's up to you how you want to package it. But yeah, it's often an extra cost. Yeah.
Super, thanks, Bindi.
What did our colours coming back for? I did want to show you just one thing. Oh yes, bookings. I'm also doing phone appointments if you want to, like, we're talking very generally about the whole process here and about the program, but if you want to talk about your specific show, if you've got particular questions, there's a phone booking appointment process here. So this is our website. This is just on the main Connecting Places touring show. And down the bottom here, there's a link to the booking page where you can go here. You can pick a time, pick a date. If those dates and times don't suit you, then let me know, send me an email and we can arrange a different time. That's no problem. But I've kind of put aside a few little blocks of time to do phone calls. So yeah, get on board. I've already had a few and it's been really great. They're just kind of like 15-minute sessions. If we need more time, we can book another appointment. But usually that's enough to kind of get a sense of answering what questions you have. We got any more other lurking questions?
No, that's it so far.
My goodness, 4 minutes to spare. I think that's everything I wanted to cover. I'll think of all the things I haven't told you as soon as we finish. But yeah, that's generally it. It's a really great program. Like, as I say, it's very celebratory of local towns. It's very much you'll spend more time after your show talking to the people who came and having a cup of tea and a plate of scones and cakes. You'll spend another hour after the show just chatting to all the people who just came and saw your show and loved it. And it's a really wonderful way to tour around Victoria. So,
yeah, if you don't like talking to people, don't apply to this program because you talk to lots of people.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks everyone for coming. That's it. We'll leave it there.
Great. Thanks, Bindi.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone.